Thank you so much for joining us here at the Do More Agriculture Foundation. We are so excited to be here today to talk about peer support and what that means. And if you've never thought about or you don't use the word peer, basically it's friends. People just like you, friends, neighbors, family, regular people. That's who our peers are. People who see things the same way, feel things the same way, have gone through some of the same experiences and can resonate with our stories. So, welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us. The Do More Agriculture Foundation is a national charitable foundation here in Canada. We were founded in 2017 by farmers, for farmers. We were awarded charitable status in 2019, and we've been bootstrapping ourselves up little by little each year ever since, and growing our presence and growing our connections across Canada. I came on board just a little over a year ago, not quite a year and a half ago. It's been a year of wonderful learning. I've had the pleasure of meeting all of the people who I've invited here to join us on this panel and work with them in various contexts. Brief housekeeping, we're planning to chat for about 40 to 45 minutes and then have time for a bit of a Q&A at the end. This is being recorded, so if you're watching it later, thanks for joining us. Please make sure that you put some comments in the bottom and let us know what you think of this particular session. What this is all about is really why peer support matters, what it is, and how it's actioned on the ground. And so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to ask each of our three panelists to introduce themselves. The aim is to showcase each of their experience and what it looks like to be a peer supporter and to support just regular people supporting one another. And I'm going to ask Doreen if you can introduce yourself first.
Well, thank you. So yes, my name is Doreen Bloomhagen. I am currently in transition right now with my farm, but my husband and I have been farming grain and cattle for 35 years, just north of the hamlet of Halkirk. I have a business where I share my story with mental health and agriculture through my business Country Road Chats. So I share what we have gone through and some of the things that helped us and some of the struggles we went through. And not just mentally, but physically as well. We've had a couple of farm accidents. And I found sharing my story has been a huge help to myself. And I hope it helps other people to share theirs as well.
Thank you so much, Doreen. I've heard Doreen speak. I invited her to come and join us for a talk, ask, listen, and open the day with her story. And that was a hugely powerful piece. And I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you. Next, I'll ask Lee Swain to introduce himself. Lee, go ahead.
Thanks, Merle. Hi, everybody. My name's Lee Swain. I am the Vice President of Account Management for Togetherall, which is the digital peer support platform that powers Ag Talk that is offered by Do More Ag to all folks in the farming and agriculture industries across Canada. Just a bit about me. I actually grew up on a commercial chicken farm, and in a rural area. I am U.S. based, so it was in Maryland. I think I'm so excited to be working with all of you and in terms of supporting the farming and agriculture population because I do know I'm intimately familiar with the stresses that farmers often face and I'm excited today to talk to you about peer support because I have personally benefited from peer support in the past. I've served as a peer supporter in the past. Obviously, this is my profession now, so I understand the real power here and think it's an excellent intervention for lots of folks. And so, excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks for joining us. And our third panelist is Andrea Paquette. Andrea, you're on.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Paquette. Merle, you always call me a pocket. It's pretty funny.
I know. Sorry.
It's that French tone, right? So yeah, Andrea Paquette. I am president and co-founder of Stigma-Free Mental Health Society. Just personally, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder way back in 2005, and I truly have benefited over the years, especially in those stages of early diagnosis, of attending peer support groups and finding great value. And then went on to start 3 peer support groups, especially in my role at the charity. And Stigma-Free Mental Health Society, we offer the Rural Minds Matter peer support training. And we also have our toolkits, which are very helpful for agricultural, rural, and remote communities as well. And super excited to share my professional and personal experience today. So thanks for having me.
We appreciate all 3 of you. And it was interesting as we were thinking through who we wanted to invite. The list was very long. The list is very, very long. This is something that we're seeing and cheering on, so much energy across Canada. This is absolutely a breaking as well as a long-standing way to help one another. So I'd like to start with a few questions. And Doreen, I'm going to put you on the spot first. When you hear the words peer support, thinking about your agricultural context, your farm experience, what does that really look like?
Yeah, so for me, peer support doesn't have necessarily that title. I I have found it's in looking around and in remote communities, it looks really, really different than, perhaps in a bigger center. So for example, one of the towns that's nearby doesn't have any stores. It's a hamlet. All it has is a post office. And the community makes sure that there is a building open and a coffee pot with chairs and tables, and it is used every day. And that's something that is vitally important to that community. Another way is it's I have to giggle when I say this, but encouraging your spouse or yourself to be involved in some recreation of some sort. For example, curling bonspiels. That's the thing right now in our little towns. And huge thing for my husband. He's always been a working man who from day, morning till night. But if there's a bonspiel or curling, man, that makes a difference for him. So, so those sort of things, yeah, don't have that title, and really, really important, especially in remote communities.
Those connection spaces, at the community level. That's what I'm hearing you say, that how important those particular things are. I want to dive in just to touch deeper with you first, Doreen. What does it look like? I know that you've acted as a peer, as a supporter for some, that people have reached out to you and said, I've got this thing going on. What do I do next? What does that look like? What sorts of activities do you think are part of just helping a regular person who's asking you questions?
Yeah, so I've been always pretty open about my struggles with mental illness. So I had quite severe postpartum depression after both my kids. And I just was never really shy about talking about it. I mean, everybody knew I was gone for months, weeks at a time. And I had a newborn baby at home. And so you couldn't ignore that. So I just always was kind of open, like to the saying that, this is what I'm going through. And looking around, this was 30 years ago. I'm aging myself now, but 30 years ago, I couldn't find anybody to talk to me about it. There wasn't anybody. And in fact, I remember my psychiatrist at the time saying, you are not to talk about this in public because it'll do you no good. And it's sad to hear that, but she wasn't wrong. It was not the time where we were very open about it. And I guess I'm a bit of a rebel. I like to talk, and I never felt like it was my fault. So I have always been open about it. So when I, put a label on it saying, I went through postpartum and also clinical depression, then somebody else says, I've got a friend who's going through a tough time. Could you talk to them? Even on the phone, or can I give them your number? And it's kind of just started off to be innocent phone calls, with a friend. And some of them, I've never actually met in person. I just got a phone call and people didn't have anybody else that was saying it out loud. So so that's how it kind of started with me, and just having those intimate conversations, and then it got to be so that they weren't so private. They were private, but I'd bring it up in a group of friends, and the first time I'd say, yeah, my therapist and I were talking, and at first you get that, oh, she said that, and now everybody's we're used to it. That's just what we do, and because it's helpful to share what you learn. So
Thank you
yeah.
so much. Yeah, no, I think that that's fantastic. Doreen, thank you so much for doing that work. Especially, I love that you're a rebel and you were willing to go there, when the people around you weren't, because you've led the way. And that's, part of why we really, really wanted to have you here. Thank you. Andrea, I'm actually going to call on you next. You also have a story that I think, resonates a bit with what Doreen has just shared. If you could start with that and go from there.
Yeah, sure. I can share a little bit about my story. Um, I actually was living in Ottawa at the time. Currently, I'm in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, so I'm in a rural community now and absolutely loving it. But in 2005, I went into a major psychosis where I couldn't tell the difference between reality and non-reality. I was seeing things, hearing things, believing things that weren't true. And I was soon diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1. I nearly didn't make it through. I attempted to take my life about 6 months later. I couldn't rebuild. It was like climbing Mount Everest to stay well and to manage all the things. But I am very lucky that I survived. And it was through the help of the community, the medical professionals, leaving to South Korea to find some purpose for a couple of years as well. But when I got back, I knew that, in 2009, I started my first peer support group and wanted to help young people understand it's okay. And in 2009, not as far back as you, Doreen, 30 years ago, but it still was very taboo. And a lot of people just weren't talking about mental health. And I learned very quickly that we need to.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What does it look like for you to be a peer supporter, to help a specific other person? Are there any particular pieces or parts that you find, or is the big piece sharing your story so that they feel less alone?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of my time with the charity as being co-founder and an advocate is definitely giving speeches and such. But in the past, currently we focus really on the training at Stigma-Free Mental Health Society for peer support. But we used to offer 3 peer support groups back as far as 2009, as I mentioned. And in being in that role, it was extremely rewarding for the sense that you would often get back the feedback from others, and I would hear, I don't feel so alone anymore. And a lot of people struggle in silence. And we have to make sure, as a community, as a society, and as people, that everybody feels supported. And so, being able to be a type of mentor, a peer support facilitator for the teens to 20s peer support group that ran for 12 years for younger people. Some of these youth communicated that they wanted to speak to their grandmother again that they hadn't spoken to for 10 years because they were afraid of her schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And so seeing these types of transformations and changes in people is just so beautiful and so rewarding that I wouldn't want it any other way. And sharing my story has been the absolute most rewarding thing that I've done in my life.
I love it. And thank you for being so open with that. Lee, Together All, the company that you work with, has built something really, really large and powerful and built that on the power of peer support. So the question for you is, when you hear peer support, what does that sound like or look like for you? What pops to mind for you?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. When I'm talking to folks, I mean, the reality is that probably 98% of the population has been has provided peer support to others at some point in their life and been a recipient of that peer support, right? We do this in our daily lives. We share things with our families, our friends, our coworkers, our significant others, where this is bothering me, and somebody will offer words of advice and wisdom. And so I think we don't recognize that as peer support in a formal way, right? But like we're all benefiting from it. And I think there's so we often say at Together All, it is about people helping people, which is and Together All is just providing the digital space for people to do that. And I think sometimes when we talk about peer support in a more formal way or connect it to mental health, then people are like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But the reality is that you can, like everybody has lived experience that can benefit, and even just stepping up and validating somebody's experience or empathizing with the way they're feeling is helpful and is therapeutic and powerful for that person. So I think the biggest thing is just like for me, what resonates so much with me when I think about peer support is how empowering it is for the individual that's providing it. Like it's just because I think we question our ability to provide that support, but you don't have to be an expert. You don't to do it. And so it's just to me an untapped resource that I would love to see more people really engaging around.
I love it. I agree. I know that sharing your story is something that we do regularly. I was at the Women's Entrepreneurs of Saskatchewan meeting in Bigger, Saskatchewan last night, and that's exactly what it was. There was a panel of 3 women entrepreneurs from our local area and lead, and they were sharing their stories of what it's like to be a women entrepreneur in a rural space. And so we know that peer support piece really resonates. And I agree with you, Lee, that sometimes people think that, oh, because it's mental health, all of a sudden, I don't have the skills, I don't have the experience, I'm scared, I don't want to make it worse. Okay, Doreen, I want you to pick up that and run with it.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant at first when people were talking to me, and then I kind of forgot about it because they weren't asking me to solve their problems. They were asking me for my experience, and they just needed that commonality and that reassurance that they weren't alone. And oh, that resonated with me so much because I didn't have anybody 30 years ago when I had my first episode. And so then once I started to realize that, yeah, they're not asking me to solve problems. They're wanting some sort of connection. They're wanting some validation. They're wanting some support and being able to say some things out loud and not feel judged. To know that I understood some of the things and to feel understood that's very powerful, for sure.
I love it. Andrea, your thoughts. The power of peer support.
Oh, the power of peer support is huge. We have been offering peer support training at Stigma-Free Mental Health Society for quite some time, 3 years now, and we've just made it more agricultural, farmer-based, but also rural communities and bringing in that aspect. And so I know a lot of times people may feel they're not prepared. And I just wanted to build on that a little bit, but there are things you can do to train and build your skills and understand that, yes, you don't have to go that route, but as well, it's very much available to you. Like at Stigma Free, in May, we're going to be offering a virtual cohort as an example again. And it gives people the tools they need to learn about models of change or ways to support or tactics and things they can do. So the power of peer support is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we're going to dive a little bit more towards the end of this conversation around building those skill sets, if that's something that you want to if that's something that someone's interested in doing. Lee, I'm going to ask you to talk about there's 2 pieces that I hear within the conversation of what's been shared. There's sharing your personal story and how much that helps you how much it helps me as a person to share my own story. And both Doreen and Andrea have shared that. And I've heard others, such as Jerry Friesen, for example, in Manitoba, has also shared strongly about how much it's helped him to share his story. The other side of it, though, is that people hear those stories and see those stories and it resonates. They feel less alone. You've both mentioned that. Lee, I'd like you to dive in a little bit about what Together All has learned about the power of that piece. So this is outside of clinical. This is just talking about your story, reading about other stories. What has Together All learned about that power?
Yeah, I think so much of what we see, so in Together All, it's digital text-based conversation. So it's people communicating, chatting with each other, providing support in sort of a community environment online. And what we see is I mean, I think at a very early level, sort of the things Doreen was talking about, like I'm not alone. Somebody else has experienced this. This is normal. Like this is I'm not an outlier here. Like, right. Like when they read other people's stories or hear those other people's stories that are being shared, they then see themselves in that, and that makes them feel less alone. It makes them feel heard and understood. And that I think is that normalization is good because it kind of lowers the temperature in some cases, or like the anxiety they might be feeling about whatever's going on for them, especially when people share stories around success they've had dealing with those issues, right? It can generate hope in what they can see for their own future as a result. So yeah, we see a lot of that. Obviously, to Andrea's point about training, there are various levels of skill sets in terms of the ability of people to respond to those stories and to provide that support within the community. But I do feel like there's a fair amount of that sort of normalization, reduction of stigma, things like that we see. The other thing I'll say is that we did and I won't go too much into the details of Ag Talk and Together All, but we did do we contracted with a research organization to sort of analyze some of the conversations that are being had in Together All, and what we saw is that there is a lot of therapeutic value to those conversations. So peer support is completely different than clinical care and should be, right? It's different things, but they work well alongside of each other. And what they found was that things like people were demonstrating active listening and reflecting what people were experiencing so that they could engage with it in different way, or even like supportive, challenging confrontation about what they were experiencing, right, can happen in those conversations. And sharing of coping skills, sharing of things that worked for them in similar situations. So all of those things are things that are brought up in traditional clinical environments as well, but we're being had in these sort of peer-to-peer conversations. So while peer support is never, I don't think, a replacement for clinical care, there is therapeutic value to lots of those conversations being had.
I really appreciate you bringing that forward because it really showcases the power of community, the power of regular people who have experienced something very similar, and sort of just helping one another through these things. Because of course, the other piece is that even if somebody is accessing clinical care or calling a helpline, what supports are in place when they're not in that 1 hour with their therapist, when they're not in that conversation on the call line? How can we make sure that we've got robust, community-based, peer-based supports that are accessible and available? I've put a link in the chat for those of us who are here live to Ag Talk, which is the link to the Together All website. That is a powerful space that within Together All. I tend to talk about Ag Talk as sort of farmer coffee row within Together All. But once you've joined Together All, then there's opportunities for you to maybe, there's a space for coaches or a space for, single parents or a space for students. There are other spaces, other communities within Together All, because none of us are ever just farmers or just people who are our jobs. We are all kinds of other things as well. And so there maybe there's someone who's going through a divorce and they want to talk to a group that's talking about, marital difficulty. Maybe that's the piece that's sitting on their heart. The other piece around Ag Talk, that I think it's important to mention, and thank you to Together All for hosting this. There's two pieces. Number one, Together All, because it's 24/7 and it's a text-based space. This isn't a space where you call in. This is a space where you can just quietly, read what other people have had to say or tap out, what's going on with you. 42% of people who've gone onto Together All using the Ag Talk a portal have shared something on Ag Talk that they've never shared with anyone. So that's a huge, huge space. So it's a space where they feel safe enough to share something that they've never felt safe enough to share with someone else. Another piece is that we know that of the people who've joined Ag Talk, 75% of them are not accessing formal mental health support at all. So that brings in the other piece, is that one of the other things about Together All is that there is 24/7 clinician support that is available. There are wall guides who are there who you can touch out to and talk to via that texting, in the moment texting. They will also monitor what you're saying and reach out to you if they feel that you need extra levels of support. And that's something that sometimes as a peer we can also do. And I know it's something that Andrea and Doreen, both of you have kind of done as well. If you know that somebody, what do you do if you get a sense that someone that you know is struggling? What's your favorite go-to thing to do? Doreen, I'm going to put you on the spot with that.
So I find that it's human nature to discuss things that are going on in your community, right? And it's also often, seen as gossip, right? But when the gossip comes around to you, and instead of sharing that, you say, so what can we do to help them? What do they need? That it changes that conversation from talking about to helping them. And so understandably, we're always going to hear of somebody going through a tough time, whether it's through the farm or through divorce or through health or whatever, but changing it from sharing that information to what do they need? What can we do? How do we, and it's just that simple switch of instead of passing on the information, we're now doing something active to help them. And lots of times people will say, well, I don't know what to say. Well, then just say that. I don't know what to say to you right now. I've never gone through this, but what do you need? And that's been a big thing, I think, for some of my friends and myself as well, is at first, like, I don't know what it's like to go through cancer. So tell me, and what can I do?
Yeah, I think showing up when we show up with casseroles, when there's been, when a family's going through grief, or, there's been a farm injury, and we show up to help and we surround them with support. When we bring that same energy to someone who's going through a mental health, that's when Do More Ag no longer needs to exist. But until we get to that point, that I think that we'll still be around. Thanks, Doreen. Just using your words and using your knowledge to kind of just shift that conversation. That's really powerful. Andrea, how about you? What does it look like specifically to shift that conversation?
Yeah, very similar to Doreen, I have to say. But when I am connected to somebody who needs help, I just think of myself when I am in that situation and what works best for me. So I still get my downs, I still get my depressions. I think all of us go through hard times, no matter how stable we are, or we all face life's challenges. But the one thing I always have asked him to do before the depression hits, or the low times, or the challenges, is simply to ask me, what can I do for you right now? And then I can express what that may be. Like Doreen is saying, though, I do ask people when they reach out for help or they're not reaching out for help. A lot of times people may think that if somebody's gone quiet, they don't want connection, when it's absolutely the opposite in many ways. So I think that's important. Not throwing tons of advice at somebody is also a tactic and a strategy that I implement on the daily. Sometimes people just need to hold your hand. Sometimes they just need a good hug. And asking them if they don't know what they want, then I understand that as well. But sometimes as well, I'll just look up resources and say, hey, when you're ready, be that advocate. Be like, okay, there is a crisis line if you want it, right? Maybe you just leave it on the dresser. Who knows? But just being very respectful of that person needing their privacy and not leaving them alone when they're extremely depressed. Like that's a big one.
Yeah, that I agree. I 100% agree. That is so huge because of course that's what happens, right? When someone's going through a bit of a crisis, particularly, and we are focused primarily on rural communities, is that people will tend to pull away, right? We're so worried about what the neighbors are going to say that we pull away and we isolate ourselves. And then on the community side, community will go, "Well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to help. uh you go get help, and like when you're fixed then we'll talk," sort of thing, right? And so there's the withdrawal and there's this sort of pushing away, and it's not because people are being mean. It's because they're not confident enough that they do have the ability to help, that they do have the skills to drop off muffins, go mow the lawn, go clean the snow, send them a text, call for a quick 2-minute chat just to say, hey, I'm thinking of you, I'm going to go to the grocery store, what can I grab for you? These are simple, easy things that we absolutely do when we know that somebody's physically ill. So let's find a way to activate that in this other space. I want to shift the conversation just a little bit. The point of today is, and our work is to encourage people to feel and increase their level of confidence to be a peer, whether it's to share their story, to reach out and help someone else. All of those things are important. I do want to highlight that if this is something that you're interested in doing, and interested in learning a little bit more about, that you can actually take additional training. There is additional training available that people can take to kind of increase these skill sets. The first one that I want to share is our own workshop, Talk, Ask, Listen. So our Talk, Ask, Listen workshop is very much geared to activating conversations in community, to increasing regular people's courage and confidence to make those shifts, the exact shift that Doreen was talking about. Make that shift instead of pulling away, to say, how can we help? What can we do? How can we support? And to having those conversations and just shifting that narrative. So that's where Talk, Ask, Listen sits. We will be opening our community fund very soon, and uh, communities from across Canada can apply to us, and we can come to your community, help you host a Talk, Ask, Listen session in your community. And if any of you have seen a Talk, Ask, Listen in session, especially within the last 6 months or so after we've done some changes to it, we'd love to hear it. You can feel free to put comments in the chat, or at the end you can feel free to unmute yourself and tell us about what you saw and heard at a Talk, Ask, Listen. So I want to highlight that. I also want to highlight, thank you, Michaela. I also want to highlight that Together All also has some trainings, and this is specifically for online training. And Lee, I know that you're not necessarily the lead on this, but at the same time, I know
Sure.
that you know lots about it. And Doreen has taken the training through Ag Talk. So I would like Lee to start and then Doreen to go next.
Yeah, sure. We do occasionally offer uh, cohort-based training, short 5-week sessions where you can do some digital training with us, online training, and then practice those skills in our community, right? So in the digital community, sharing with others, practice those skills under the supervision or with the support of some of our clinical teams. So you can ask them if you need support or debrief some of those situations with them. in a more formal way. I would say the advantage of this over other trainings, this is probably a lighter training than some of the other ones that are out there, that both Merle and probably Andrea is going to talk about. But the advantage here is it is asynchronous, and if you're at a distance from places where might not be able to access other trainings or other resources, you can do it from home. Yeah, if you are interested in those sorts of opportunities, you can reach out to Merle and she can connect you with me, and I'd be happy to share more info.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how Together All does it is that they'll kind of we'll develop a bit of a list of, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 people who are interested in doing that training, and then, work with Together All to create that cohort and launch it. Doreen, I'm going to put you on the spot, and you can feel free, just because Lee's here doesn't mean that you can provide some good, good honest feedback as well. But I'd like you to talk about the experience of doing the Egg Talk training, as a peer, kind of a super peer, let's put it that way, and how that's helped you.
So it's interesting. When I started with the training on through Egg Talk, the written word is a little bit different than the spoken word, and I found that it made me think a little bit more before I talked. That's a good thing, and it made me be very clear in what I was thinking. So, for example, Together All talks about, active listening. So instead of just showing, because we're not video, it's all written and artwork and that sort of thing, that I had to fully express that I had heard what they had said by repeating it back to them and say, what I hear you saying is this, and I feel like I can relate to that in this sense because I went through this. And so I thought it made my speaking and my getting my point across much more clear, because I had to write it out instead of talking. And so that was interesting. I also will say, and I want to get into this more as I take more training, the art part of it was really interesting too. So just to explain that real briefly, and Lee can clarify if needed. Sometimes people don't have the words or the vocabulary to express what they're saying or feeling. So that the fact that they can do a picture and have a little bit of artwork to show their emotions, I thought that was really interesting. I'm an artsy person myself. And so, it give you, when you go to an art gallery and you see something and you think, well, what is that? Well, if you stand there and think about it, how does it make you feel? That was really interesting. And I think it would be really good for children as well, right? So I think that Together All training helped me just to clarify and to be more specific and to really think out my responses and to just to be really clear. And when you stumble like I am now, and when you're talking with someone, you take that time and reflection and that I think has really been really good for me. And I plan to continue with that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Andrea, I would love for you to share about the Rural Minds Matter Toolkit and the Rural Minds Matter Peer Support Training.
Yeah. So at Stigma-Free Mental Health, we have a rural mental wellness toolkit that has been in existence since March 2021, but it isn't a static toolkit. You go online, there's articles, resources, activities, conversation cards you can have with your family, section for seniors and youth, etc. So that's our digital resource. We also offer our peer support training, Rural Minds Matter peer support training. And I'll tell you a little bit about it just briefly. It is over 2 days and it's 12 hours of training. So we'd had our last one January 24th and 25th. We had nearly 30 people attend. That at the most, we have 30 people virtually. And we also offer in person, and we want to head out to Manitoba and southeastern Alberta. But we have another virtual training I just had to mention, Merle, coming up in May Mental Health Month. And what that covers is over the 2 days, models of support from person-centered to self-determination. We also talk about harm reduction and strength-based models. And as well, during day 2, we focus more about putting theory into practice in breakout rooms, practicing the models of support communication skills. So this is a more extensive offering. And we know that, the more brief or shorter ones can be amazing too, but this does it allows people to just dig in a little bit more. And one thing I wanted to say as well, you don't have to have a mental illness or a serious mental health issue in your background or that you're experiencing to be a peer support person. I don't necessarily say peer support worker because your peer support specialist. You could say that if we're taking some training. But lastly, just want people to know that we all go through struggles, and that is the common peer experience. So at Stigma-Free, we really value lived experience and understand that we all have something valuable to share. And so we hope that you'll contact us. I have it in the chat. I had to put it in there, make it super easy. And you can find our toolkit and also our peer support training. And I hope you join us. So thanks.
I really appreciate that piece. And again, this is the we want to recognize and celebrate that, for example, Doreen, you were working as a peer support person long before you ever actually took any formal training to do this. However, throughout your journey, each time you've added another piece, and I think that you've actually taken an earlier version of rural peer support training with Stigma-Free in the past a few years ago. And so this has been something that you've done. You've kind of accessed those additional training pieces to build your skill set. Yes, the one most recently at Ag Talk, which you spoke about, but this is something that you've actively built. What sorts of things, as a person who's taken some of this training, how has it changed you as a peer in terms of the work that you do to talk to people?
Oh, so it's given me some confidence in when I'm talking, like you kind of think, am I helping somebody like by telling them my story? Or was that the right thing to say? And then when you take some training, you're like, okay, I wasn't too far off there. I can refine this. I can be more clear about this. And then I realize, oh, that really was helpful, but maybe I didn't get that feedback, right? You're not always going to get feedback. Especially sometimes I will be up speaking in front of a large crowd and I'll have, 2 or 3 people or 4 or 5 come up and talk to me after and realize those are the only ones that took the time to come and give me feedback and talk. But knowing what I know from taking some training, it affected more, and it needs to sit and simmer for a bit. You need and marinate, as sometimes is what I say too, right? It might not, they may not have come up to me that day, but maybe later on when they have a conversation, they'll remember that, I was in hospital for weeks at a time and I still had a successful family and I still had a successful farm and career. And it gave me some confidence. It gave me some peers. It gave me some other people that do the similar thing, right? And because there's times when you think, oh, who wants to hear my woe was me story, right? Because not all of it was good. I know when Lee was talking about sharing successes and that sort of thing, like I got to be sure to share my failures too. That is probably where I learned the most. And so having that reinforcement through the training and realizing that, oh, I didn't realize that was maybe as powerful as it was. But talking with others, taking the training, realizing that it's something that goes over time. And it certainly helped me a lot. I feel more confident, more and I have more of the vocabulary. You wouldn't know it right now, but
You're doing just fine.
it
That's
gives
why we want you to get you're here. It's like we are regular people. We are regular people.
absolutely. Like I don't have all the terms, but I know what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love it. I know I resonate with that so strongly, Doreen. It's important to share when you're struggling, right? And it's important to share when you didn't do things well, or it took longer than maybe other people, because your path was different. And I also the other piece that I want to share is that sometimes what I'm seeing more of is that there's some specific growth in areas such as caregiver support. So I've seen this in terms of healthcare around people who are caregivers for people with Alzheimer's or dementia, but I also see it within mental health because those of us, and I identify as a caregiver, I am an active caregiver, and I belong to a caregiver peer support group, and it is hugely helpful to me. And I've seen the impact of when I can share my experiences as a caregiver. I was just in Medicine Hat in January, and one of the ladies that I shared with, once she heard that I am an active caregiver, her story just poured out of her. And we went and we found a quiet corner and we just talked and shared stories because you don't necessarily have to be the one who's ill. You may be a family member or a supporter or a neighbor or a friend, and you're trying to find your way forward. These spaces are for you as well. So go ahead and join Egg Talk. You will find stories that resonate. You will find, and you might be able to share your story. And as a neighbor, as a friend, I was scared. I was so, or whatever it is, and it might help someone else too. So we're all in this together is really it's really the message of this. And you have more skills and more knowledge than what you might think. So the I want to open up to the floor and see if there's any questions. What I'm going to do while that happens, I'm going to try and manage two things at once. So apologies. I'm also going to put into the chat links to various groups across Canada who already do agricultural rural peer support. And so the Ag Life Group in BC, the Porchlight Society in Alberta, the Guardian Network in Ontario, the Sentinel program in Quebec. There's similar groups in New Brunswick as well. We Talk, We Grow. So I'm going to pop some links in, so feel free to take a look at some of those, as well as we know that first contact piece, is really important. To if you know that someone's struggling, that it's okay that you're not an expert. You're just making sure that you're making that contact and helping someone who just might need to know that you care, right? And that really matters. First of all, I want to open it up to my three panelists. Do you have any final pieces that you would like to say? Lee, I'm going to start with you.
I think I would just say, yeah, I think my party words would be, and you mentioned this earlier, Merle, and I was thinking about reflecting on this, preparing for this, but then you mentioned it too, the way communities show up when there are deaths or farm injuries, coming to support. I remember being on my farm and we had a summer where it was incredibly hot and we lost like a fourth of our chickens, and other people came and supported. Like the agricultural community, farmers, rural communities are really good at showing up. Like they show up. And so this is just an extension of that, right? It's like remembering that same sort of responsibility and developing some comfort with showing up when you're concerned for somebody's mental health. I think that's really the goal here.
Absolutely. 100%. I really appreciate that. Andrea, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, in closing, I just wanted to build upon what I shared earlier that a lot of people, especially in rural communities, may isolate when they're going through hard times. And I just love Lee, that showing up, that's very important too, but not giving up on people. Just because somebody says, no, not today, doesn't mean that tomorrow will be the same. So, not giving up on each other, keeping those lines of communication open, and being that listening ear, not always the advice giver. So, I know from a lot of peer support situations that I've been in, being there is sometimes it's the best thing you can do to start. And I love how we talk about making the meals and things like that. I remember I was going through a really, really tough time, and my really good friend, she brought meals, and wow, what a difference. So just the littlest things can mean the world when somebody's going through a hard time. Thank you.
I love it. Doreen?
So for me, I would say in my presentations, I often show the three hardest words I've ever had to say is I need help. And I'm not just talking mental health. I'm talking I need help. Uh, like I'm moving right now. Good Lord, nobody told me it was going to be like this. And so I had to learn to practice what I preach. And so I had to phone up a couple of my friends because I was on a bit of a deadline. And I said, can you come help me? I'm stuck. I don't know where to put this stuff. I don't know if I need it in my new place. I don't know if I should be taking it or throw it. And it was hard to do. And not, like I say, not just about mental health, but how good are farmers about asking for help in anything? We're all such little silos of our own businesses, our own families, our own farms. And so that's really hard to do. And so I find that I need to be really observant. And I'm not always that way, but I find I need to take the time to be observant, going, I bet you she could use some help and doesn't know how to ask, right? Or, maybe if I just show up, she'll let me help, right? And so, yeah, I've I was my girlfriend said, you called her? And I'm like, I didn't know what else to do. She's retired. I know she's a good friend. We'd like to visit. And so I said, do you mind visiting while we pack boxes? So yeah, being observant, and looking for people that need help and practicing what you preach is my biggest thing. Oh, that's tough sometimes.
It is. It is so hard to say I need help. It very, very difficult. You'll see the flag behind me where the sort of the big saying in agriculture, tough it out, right? And so one of our major logos, we cross out the tough and we put talk it out, right? You've got to share. Nobody gives a mind reader. We've got to share what's on our mind. I want to open it up to the floor. If you have a question that you would like one of the panelists to answer, please feel free to put it in the chat or put up your hand and I'll call on you and I'll unmute and you can unmute and ask your question. Just a reminder, this is being recorded. If anyone on this has a specific example of when peer support helped them, or want to add into the conversation in any particular way, please feel free. Or maybe you've taken training and you want to talk about that and how it's helped you. Karen, please go ahead.
Thanks, Merle. I'm really happy to be here with all these wonderful people today. Actually, I was on a webinar when Lee was presenting yesterday for the CVMA and the ABVTA as a veterinary technologist. And just a question for you, Lee, because I'm doing a veterinary social work program and I want to tag along onto the peer support training. I've already done the Rural Minds Matter with Andrea in January, so it's fabulous too. More learning is always great, right? So for Lee, I just want to ask Lee, so if I were to take the peer support training as a veterinary technologist in the veterinary profession, would it be the same peer support training under ag culture, or is that different?
It would be a very similar training. The difference would be the other cohort members you'd be connected with. So in terms of sort of roundtable debriefs, you would be with other folks in the veterinary profession versus other people in the rural and agriculture industry. Probably a bit of overlap there potentially. So I don't think it would be drastically different.
So would you recommend to do both trainings then, or just start with one and then see
Yeah,
how it goes?
I think you could do one. I'm always up for people continuing to educate themselves. So if you then wanted to do a second one, I think that would be fine too.
Yeah, and because one of the reasons I ask is because my veterinary work, generally speaking, for the most part, has been in rural landscape, and it will probably merge to that over time as well. So
Yeah, I think the skills you learn would be applicable in both groups. So I would say, you could share your information with Merle, and we can keep you on that running list. And depending upon which one forms first, we can put you into that group. And thanks so
super.
much for expressing interest. I love that you're passionate about doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you for all you do. Thanks.
There is a great question from Glenn Hutton in the chat. He said, how do you approach individuals to become peer supporters? I'd like to actually go with this first. And I hope, Glenn, that the one piece is that we are all already peer supporters. All it takes is to show up with two ears and a warm heart and a willingness to move forward and to wrap yourselves around a person rather than step back. So increasing all of us to have a little bit more courage and confidence and to do what Doreen said, to just tweak that conversation instead of sitting on the gossip side, activate how do we help? Like how can we take action? How can we know that rural communities can and do wrap themselves around each other, right? And so how do we activate that same skill set to help when somebody's, needing help because of a mental health crisis, right? So that's, I just want to say that everyone can be a peer. Some of us are going to be, it's going to be a better fit for us, but I would like to see more people just increase their courage and confidence. But having said that, I want to actually ask Andrea and Lee, and Lee, I'll ask you first. Actually, no, I'm going to ask Doreen. Doreen, how do you think would be best? Because you are an active farmer, right? Like how do you approach individuals, or how would you go about encouraging people to be a peer supporter?
I think acknowledging that they have the skills. So obviously you're asking someone because you think they would be good at it. So a lot of people don't recognize their own skills and how they contribute. So I would say, the way you handled talking to your son about this, I think you're really good at that. You should consider doing that when you are at coffee, or you should maybe consider, talking to my son because he's having a hard time, and that different perspective coming from somebody outside the family might be really beneficial. I don't think people understand always how the impact that they have on others until it's pointed out. And that's one thing I found with peer training, is that it shows me that it's going, by doing this, you are supporting this and this and this in that person. And you don't even realize it. You're just talking at coffee, realizing, or whatever, sharing your story, going, oh, I didn't realize that could be helpful to somebody else. So I think pointing out their skills and how they are, that they're good at something, we all love to be complimented. Right?
That's true. We absolutely do.
Right. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I'm sure Andrea and Lee have more.
Well, just before that, I think I need to go back even further. Who do I, approach in the community so that they recognize that once I've identified those folks, then, what you're saying, it would be the, the sell, but how do I tweak their interest to even putting their hand up to come to a workshop or, you know, have coffee with me to even talk about, you know, be doing this, becoming involved in this type of
doing this kind of work. Glenn, do you think that this particular session, which we've recorded and will be on our YouTube, just the conversations of today, recognizing that we all do have, some natural level skills, we might already be encouraging the people around us, maybe in other areas, maybe we're peer support, maybe we help out on farming or entrepreneurs or, other aspects of our life, or maybe we're part of an AA group, right? So people who've gone through AA, they're natural peer supporters, right? Like they're incredible, and they get there's a lot of skill set with that. So maybe it's simply, I really want you to watch this video. I want you to think about what it looks like to help other people. And then from there, I'd really like to, have a conversation with you about, putting up your hand and saying, yeah, I'm willing to be identified as someone that people who are struggling, that they can reach out to and touch. Maybe that would be a help. Just putting that out there as a particular idea. Can you tell us more, Glenn, about what you are looking to do? Are you looking to develop a cohort of peers?
Yeah, yeah, I've figured out after a few months of trying this that trying to get farmers to come into any type of workshop information session, the stigma is almost, in my mind, it's really difficult to overcome. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking the best way to get this program launched is to find peer supporters or point of contacts, whatever you want to call them. But my problem is I've approached people mm-hmm. and they say, oh yeah, it's a good idea. And then I say, well, let me know and we'll set up, some training or whatever, and dead silence.
Right.
So right. I just needed that.
Sorry, this rings so true to me is offer to pick them up. My husband goes to men's yoga, which let me tell you is not real popular in a small town. But he has a men's yoga class that he loves. And he is the biggest recruiter because he says, oh, there's yoga Monday night, I'll pick you up. And they're like, and you know what I mean? Like they do express some interest. He doesn't just pick up random strangers, but if they show any interest at all, yeah. Pick them up. And it's not them on their own. It's you with them alongside, shoulder to shoulder. You're not dragging them, you're alongside them. And that's what we have found to be very helpful is I'd say, okay, this sounds good. This is it. I'll come pick you up. And the other thing is, and I'd love to talk to Glenn offline later, is I found a few friends, and it's just a very small group that wants to have those deep conversations, not gossip, not this, but truly have those same interests. And so we created a group called Growing Minds, and we meet once a month. And we have those tough, hard conversations, but it's very safe, very private, and very intentional. So if you're interested in that, I would love to talk to you.
Yeah, and share that particular example. I think it's great. The other piece, Glenn, is that sometimes you need to bring them in and feed them. Right. And then just have a instead of saying, okay, you have to attend a 4-hour or 8-hour or 2-day workshop, that will definitely be too much. But come for supper, we'll feed you, and there's going to be a guest speaker, and they're going to talk about, something that's helpful, right? And the Porchlight Society in Alberta can do that. The Do More Eggs, Foundation, happy to do that. We're, happy to help, because this is where we sit, right, around activating regular people to recognize that they are part of this conversation and that they have the skills now.
Yeah. I love the phrase activating.
Yeah.
Activating.
Yeah.
That's a keeper. I'm going to steal that.
That's not a steal, it's a gift. With that, I want to close out this particular session. Thank you all. I will stay on for a little longer if anyone has any further questions.